named chair of the Norfolk Board of Education. Our board is charged with the well-being of Botel Elementary School. Botel serves students from pre-K through 6th grade using a multi-age classroom model, and currently there are 72 students enrolled. It goes without saying that elementary schools in our area are facing challenging times. With declining enrollments, increasing special ed costs and responsibilities, and far-reaching state educational mandates, school management is no easy task. But thankfully, the news is not all bad. Educational research and innovation have allowed huge strides forward in teaching techniques and technology. And I really believe that schools and teachers of today are better equipped than ever to teach our children in flexible, practical, and substantive ways. Although Botel has been in operation since 1970, we are in many ways a very young school. Over half of our board, or about half of our board, was elected just this last fall, and the majority of our teaching staff and administration is new within the last 5 years. As such, we are energized to meet the challenges of today's education. And it's clear that the success of our elementary school goes hand in hand with the success of our town. And I really think that it's important that our board provides the best education possible in both a socially aware and fiscally responsible way. We are working hard to be open and responsive to our citizens and to seek out information to help support success. For that reason, we're very pleased to be part of the conversation here tonight, and I'm very pleased to introduce Jonathan Costa. Jonathan is not a new face to Norfolk. We got to know him well during the school consolidation study 5 or 6 years ago. Would you like me to read? I was going to read your little bio.
You don't have to, but you can if you want.
Go for it. Go for it.
It's pretty impressive.
Most of it's true.
Jonathan is the Assistant Executive Director of EdAdvance in Litchfield. His experience and practice have been informed by time spent in secondary history instruction, district curriculum development, for-profit corporate management, consulting, and the provision of a wide range of professional learning services to over 130 school districts in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. Former Board of Ed member, Jonathan is also the author of the Corman Press book, Digital Learning for All, Now, and has been a passionate advocate for improving public education for over 35 years. Jonathan also serves on the Commission for International Education and has chaired international school accreditation visits on 4 continents. So, with no further ado,
Thank you. It is very gratifying to see so many familiar faces, and you knew it was me, and you came anyway. I am very grateful. So, we have about an hour, so I thought I would just give you a 10,000-foot view, and then let's talk about it. And if you see something on the way to that you really want to talk about in the moment, it's a nice small group, just raise your hand, we'll talk about it as we go. So I thought I would give you the entire history of public ed in Connecticut in about the first 3 minutes, and then talk about where we are today, and more importantly, what the next decade or 2 might bring, because I think that's where the real interesting challenges lie. And I think this is a theme that comes to us frequently in Connecticut, is we like things the way they are, and that it's worked for us for a long time. And one of the competing interests and one of the tensions that is sort of the theme of the next 20 or 30 years is trying to figure out which of those steady habits that brought us all of that success will help to ensure our future success, and which of those steady habits are actually impeding our success in the future. And I think teasing out the differences between those things will be a central part of every community's dialogue as they try to think about what's happening and what's coming. Our foundational mission, if you are in a public school, is to prepare every student that you have for life learning and work beyond school, everyone. That's not a choice, it is a community obligation, and it's part of the Connecticut State Constitution. you don't get to choose whether you prepare kids equally. That is your responsibility. And for the vast majority of Connecticut public school life, it looked just like this. And if you take a look at this picture and think about how schools today and what a teacher looks at when they walk into a classroom today is different from that. And you get a sense of the challenge that teachers face today. This is primarily, we could have taken this picture in just about any public school in Connecticut from maybe 1900 to 2000. I mean, for basically a century, it was fairly well unchanged. And what you see here are compliant, petrified young children, because discipline and order, if one of these kids got out of line, they could probably expect 2 beatings. One from the teacher, and one from their parents when they got home and found out that they had misbehaved. And they are all quite similar looking. They came from similar cultural and religious backgrounds. In fact, the goal of public ed for most of the first 80 years was to inculcate students into that mode of thinking, and that was it. We wanted to teach kids primarily how to read and write, and those kids that learned how to do it kept going, and those kids that didn't probably didn't finish, but there were a vast array of honorable blue-collar jobs for them to do that they could raise a family on and pursue the American dream through, and it worked for everybody. Schools in this configuration were essentially designed to rank and sort kids, to figure out which kids got it and which kids didn't, and it was easy because they all got the same thing. So you got the same book, you were taught it in the same way, and if you made it, you did, and if you didn't, you didn't, and that was okay. Until the 1970s or so. And in the 70s, you begin to see the emergence of sort of a more global economy, the beginning of the self-examination of American public education through the lens of our Western competitors and sometimes our Eastern competitors. And in more and more international comparisons, American students as a whole were coming up short. And there was a buzz in educational circles and political circles about, was American public education sort of losing their edge? And it sort of culminated in this study in a report to Congress in the late 70s, and really was the beginning of what we would call the standards movement. Because one of the central findings of A Nation at Risk is that most of the nations that we compete against all had a unified central curriculum. They were all teaching the same thing across the country. They had one curriculum. And in the United States, we had 20,000, right? Every district was different. Every district taught what they wanted to, what they felt was important. And that's fine if you grow up to compete against kids from your district. But if you grow up to compete against people from other places and they've all learned other things better than you have or differently than you have, you don't have that same competitive advantage. So there was discussion in the United States about, should we have standards? Should we have a common definition of what it means to be literate, what it means to be, what it means to be a good social studies student, what it means to be a good math student? And the answer pretty much was yes, and it really began the beginning of the standards movement. And this, for those of you who can't read like two-point font, this is one page of math standards for first grade. And each little thing is probably a month's worth of instruction. And if you take all of the standards and add them up, you couldn't teach what's in there if you had 40 years of public school. And it's nobody's fault. The assumption when we first began this effort was nobody knows better about what kids need to know about certain subjects than the people that teach these subjects. So we took the math teachers and we sent them off and said, come back and tell us what every kid needs to know about math. And we did the same thing with the social studies teachers. And none of them had adult supervision, so they all came back with everything that they thought they needed to know in their content area. And no one was thinking, well, if everybody has this for all 12 content areas, how are you possibly going to do it all? But it was more important for us to identify it and capture it, and it really reinforced this sort of notion that we get rigor by volume, by how much. Because in a print-based world, you learn just in case you need it, right? We're gonna teach this to you because sometime in some journey in your life, you might need it. And how the heck are you gonna do it or know it if you don't have your book with you? You have to learn it just in case. And standards primarily are grounded in a just-in-case curriculum design model. Interestingly enough, after 15 years of working with standards, things hadn't really changed that much. We still were lagging internationally, and that brings us to 2001 or 2002, No Child Left Behind. And the difference between standards voluntary and standards No Child Left Behind is that in this model, it didn't matter what your future aspirations were. We were going to test every kid every year. Prior to this, it still was, if you want to go to college, you took the SATs. In Connecticut, they had a mastery test, grade 4, 6, 8. But, it was just general guidance. Starting in 2001 with No Child Left Behind, the whole idea was test every kid every year. Test your way to success. Because if we have everybody accountable for the performance of every kid, then inevitably all children will succeed. And in fact, the goal, when it was launched in 2001, was that by 2011, every student would be proficient. The thing I love about this picture is there's just one kid who's saying, what? What did he say? I don't think that's a great idea. You can't test your way to success. And here again, there's one student paying attention in that class. His expression is different because he just heard the policy. So, 15 years of standards, 18 years of test every kid, and that's reading and math performance grades 4 through 8 from 2003 to 2019 of Connecticut students taking the NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Essentially 5,000 kids at random pulled from Connecticut schools every year to participate in NAEP. And you can see, if you have too much stuff to teach and you have a really diverse group of kids to teach it, just threatening them with a test every year is not going to involve increased student performance. There was one positive benefit to No Child Left Behind, and that was the idea that we shouldn't leave any child behind. Yes, sir.
Are those lines there that seem to be static more or less?
Yeah.
Are the levels any good?
Well, this is an average score. I believe 400 was is the highest. Connecticut as a state is in the top 10 easily of performing as a general group. Of course, in that data is a really wide margin of performance. We have kids who do better than or as well as any kid anywhere. And we have other kids who do very poorly. And it primarily divides on socioeconomic and racial grounds, and those are the averages.
Is the average acceptable for an
It is.
intelligent young person?
It is if you are in the group that scored high. It's not acceptable as a total group, I don't believe. Simply because, for two reasons. One, there was a promise of ongoing and continuous improvement if we just undertook this testing regime. And that clearly has not panned out. The second part of it is, even if it was acceptable for some, what is tested on these tests are necessary for success but not sufficient. So even if you are a student reading and doing math at a high level, if you think that that is some guarantor of success in the environment that you're going to face when you leave school, you're wrong.
What do you think the 20 years before that looked like, do you know?
I think the NAEP has been pretty steady.
Uh-huh.
It's been pretty steady. But prior to No Child Left Behind, the ethic that we need to get everybody something was pretty softly pursued. And one of the reasons was, as I said before, the economy was primed to accept kids who didn't have academic success. There was plenty of opportunity. And so if you had large numbers of kids that didn't perform, it didn't mean that they couldn't be self-sufficient in society or they couldn't get a job. They could. As the economy has shifted and promises to shift more, the question is, what will unskilled students be able to do? And the answer overwhelmingly is, not much. And that picture is going to become bleaker for a larger number of kids very quickly. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in addition, now, as an overlay, while all of this was going on in schools, the entire world was changing. And these snowballs rolling downhill are essentially a reminder of how the last 35 years has essentially upended our understanding of knowledge, of productivity, and laying the groundwork for the future inversion of our economy. So in the 35 years that I've been doing this, from a desktop computer to a man-made object injecting a single red blood cell, that's pretty impressive technology innovation. And in less time than it takes for a student to go through the public schools. So all of this happened, if you had kids that graduated from Region 7 last year, when they were in kindergarten, these things still existed. And you went from out of your way to communicate to going out of your way not to. And that's just one generation of students. From, I need to go to the library so I can get something I need, to, I have to turn off my phone, I can't look at it anymore. My mom was a librarian, and when I look at that picture, I think of a museum to learn in. I don't think of a place that kids, or I, frankly, go to learn anything that I need to learn to function. And most specifically, as a teacher, as the unquestioned content expert in the room to just another piece of information source. Because anyone can fact check anything you say at any time, and I'm sure some of you are doing it right now. Just the way it is. And the next 10 years is likely to be more disruptive than the last. The last major increase in digital speed was 2003. That was the transition from 3G to 4G. And you are on the cusp sometime this summer, if you go to New York City, or maybe Hartford or New Haven, probably not till next year, you will encounter 5G. The iPhone 12 will have 5G. Don't waste your money on the 11. It's not coming to the 12. Look at those numbers. So it's, the speed numbers are easy to comprehend. So okay, a 4G 2-hour film download takes 6 minutes. Now it takes less than 4 seconds. That's pretty impressive. But the real impact with 5G is in the network. So first and foremost, I draw your attention to that number. A 10-fold decrease in network latency. So in a 4G network, I push the button, and even if my processor can do it, it takes time to go out, collect, come back, and there's a gap there. So if you're trying to do virtual reality, you need to have a really solid network connection. You need really good equipment, because if you're doing a VR and there's any lag between a movement you make and what you see in the screen, it's really disorienting. It doesn't work. If you get below 10 milliseconds, and you can have response as low as 1 millisecond in a 5G network, the brain cannot distinguish the lag. So you hit it and it responds faster than your brain can say there's something happening. So if you're doing robotic surgery and the doctors in
school?
what's that?
In elementary school?
No, actually, I'm thinking about the economy at this point. So if you're doing robotic surgery and you are a patient at Sharon Hospital and the doctor is in Shanghai, it doesn't matter, because the reaction times are below the doctor's ability to separate, and it's no different from him or her just using their hand. So this will be the difference in making autonomous driving more safe than human driving. Because if the cars can react faster than you can, then they are better drivers than you are. This number, the traffic capacity. So this can, these networks can handle 1 million devices per acre. So this is when your orange juice tells your refrigerator it's 1/4 from being empty, and your refrigerator tells Amazon you need orange juice, and the next day it's sitting on your front porch because that's the way you want it. And these network capacity and speed changes will rewire our economy. And this is about capitalism, folks. This is what made America great. It is the pursuit of capital. I will make more money with digital workers because they don't complain, they're not late, they don't file workman's comp claims, they just keep working. And you can make all of the "it's not good for society" claims you want. If you have the capital and you want more of it, you are going to replace humans with machines when you can. You just will. There will always be a market for that high-end personal touch thing. So what you're seeing, what you will see is a horseshoe economy. really wealthy on one side, really handmade custom on the other, and a lot of no opportunity in the middle. And, you know, it is one of the great political conceits of the last generation that the immigrants are taking your jobs. They're not. Machines with chips in them are taking your jobs. Model T, Tesla. Not one human being on the floor. The blue line is manufacturing output in the US, 1980 to 2015. The red line is the size of the manufacturing workforce. The gap is not human productivity. It's human displacement. That's a graph of the cost of and value of a New York City taxi medallion. 1947 to 2017. What happened right there? Uber happened. Now, it's a truism about technology innovation that we tend to overestimate its impact in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. So a person in the hub 20 years ago giving a speech about the impact of 4G was saying, wow, you're not gonna believe this. You're gonna be able to download a 6-hour movie, a 2-hour movie in 6 minutes. It's gonna be great. But he wasn't there saying, oh, and you know what else will happen? You won't ever need a taxi again. You'll just be able to get an app and call a car and they'll come and get you. And you don't even have to pay them. It just takes it right out of your account. No one was thinking that. So what are the disruptions going to be? You can just sort of imagine them. Some of them are already underway, and generally, it's the combination of these three forces that will reshape the global economy. It is the productivity of mechanized labor, the ability of artificial intelligence and algorithms to improve decision making. So if there is virtually no non-creative cognitive work that an algorithm will not have an impact on at some point in the next 10 years. From automatically writing news stories, which is already happening, to diagnosing cancer under a microscope, anything that is a repetitive cognitive task, they get really good at it. They get really good at it. It's an Amazon distribution warehouse. I believe the system is in place right up at Laurelbrook. So this is a great resource. I would encourage you to pick up your phone right now and go find it. It's McKinsey Global Institute, and it's called the Skills Shift Discussion Paper. It was published in May of 2018. It's about an 84-page PDF that you can download for free. And one of the key insights from McKinsey was they looked at how automation and AI will accelerate the shift in the jobs market. And what they did was they analyzed US and Western European work hours in 2016. And you see them here in billions of hours worked and the skill categories that that work was in. And the second column is the predicted decline or increase in skills, in jobs using those skills over the next 15 years, so up through 2030. So physical, United States, all sectors down 11, basic cognitive down 14, high tech up 60. In Western Europe, down 16, down 17, down 52. If you look at that same data displayed a little differently, it is those same skill categories. Bottom left-hand corner is the skills that are currently limited demand in the current economy and projected to decline even further. Top left, important currently but going to decline. Bottom right, limited now but growing in importance. Top right, already important and going to be more so. By the way, interpersonal empathy is in the top right. So when I work with school clients, one of the things I ask them is, go walk through your school today. In which quadrant was the work being done in those classrooms in? Because with very few exceptions, advanced IT is probably one of them. At some level, this work can be done in every grade level classroom starting in kindergarten, preparatory for higher order challenges to come. But much like reading, writing, and basic math, these skills require practice and feedback over numbers of years to be mastered and used effectively. So if you see one of your missions as preparing students for life learning and work beyond school, you have to think about what life learning and work beyond school looks like in 2030 or 2040. Your kindergartners this year, I believe, are the class of 2033. What is it going to look like? It's not going to look anything like it looks now. If you want a good read, this is a good one. But one of my favorite quotes from this book is, Yuval Harari basically says, listen, for most of human history, we learned and then we worked. And in the environment that we are going into, you will need to continuously learn or there will be no work. So, given that, I think most public schools systems, small s, face three basic challenges. One is trying to refocus their system on supporting those upper right-hand quadrant 21st century skills and attributes that will be the foundation of a truly digital economy. If you're in New England, you're not going to escape the middle one. It is, I'll talk a little bit about it, it's way beyond Norfolk, the northwest corner. It just is a fact of our lives. And in order to do the first two, you're gonna have to do the third, and that may be the hardest of the three. And in each of these three challenges, there are built-in competing forces that are going to complicate the resolution of the issue. And in the first one about creating the schools capable of delivering on those skills, there is a real tension in thoughtful educational circles about what the future of schools should look like. Because there is this unknowable quality of what's coming. And we think, because of our history, if we just keep doing those things that helped us before, we're gonna be okay. And I don't dispute that there are some of those things that are still really important. But if you think it's all of them, just reason would suggest you're probably wrong. I do this work a lot, creating portraits of the graduate, sort of what would it look like if you left school prepared for life learning and work beyond school. This is one from I think this was in California, a California school, but communication, productivity, accountability, character, flexibility, adaptability, empathy, critical thinking, and problem solving. If I had 10 different districts, one day after another, to do their vision of a graduate, they would all look something very much like that. That is not really in dispute. Most people who think about this come up with a list that looks a lot like that. The challenge is most of the major systems that drive public education are not aligned to deliver those things. They're focused on needing to know just in case and doing routinized, low cognitive skill work repetitively. That's what they're mostly aligned to do. You can't just swap the goals for learning that are in that upper right-hand quadrant and not change assessment, not change teaching, not change the way you resource deploy budgets, not change policy and regulation, and not change how communities are engaged in public schooling. Because if that's the only thing that changed, think about an engine with 6 gears all running in one direction at the same speed, and one gear that's trying to move either at a different speed or in a different direction. It's noisy and it's destructive and nothing happens. Nothing good happens. And changing these systems is a critical challenge. I hope you can read this from the cheap seats